Good afternoon, everyone. We'll be starting our program in a while, and we'd like to request for you to please rename yourselves according to the prompt that was given. And please note the reminders, kindly keep your cameras. You may turn on your cameras, but please keep your microphones on mute for the duration of the program. To welcome us all and to serve as MC for this afternoon, we'd like to welcome Dr. Zarina Salona Akpedonu, Dean of the School of Social Sciences. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Thank you, Chris. Welcome, everyone. This is the ASEAN University Network on Ecological Education and Culture, or AUN EEC webinar on tensions and intentions in urban sustainability, revisiting the city. Thank you for joining us today. It is now 3 p.m. local time. Good afternoon from Metro Manila. I am Zarina Saloma Akpedonu, Dean of the School of Social Sciences, Ateneo de Manila University, and I will be your moderator for today's webinar. Just some reminders before we start. Please note that the program is being recorded on Zoom. All participants are muted automatically as they enter the meeting room. Throughout the session, kindly type in any comments or questions in the chat box. We will collect these for the open forum later on. There will be an evaluation survey at the end of the session. Requests for e-certificates may be made through the same form. Please rename on Zoom your institution, followed by your name splashed on the slide. At this point, we would like to ask everyone to settle for the Philippine National Anthem.
Magiliw, pelas ang sinanganan, alam ng puso, sa dibdib mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, duyan ka ng magiting, sa manlulupig, di ka pasisingin. Sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mong bukaw, may nilagang tula at awit sa paglayang minamahal. Ang kislap ng watawat mo'y tagumpay na nagdiningning, ang bituing at araw niya kailan pa may magdidilim. Lupa ng araw ng walhating pagsinta, buhay langit sa piling mo. Ang hinigaya na pag may mga api, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Now, to formally welcome everyone to today's webinar, my call on Dr. Emmanuel De Locado, Executive Director of AUN EEC, and also an Assistant Professor in the Department of Biology of Ateneo de Manila University. Eman is also the Program Manager for Sustainable Development Goals in the Ateneo Institute of Sustainability, and he will deliver the welcoming remarks.
Thank you, Dean Bupit. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. I am not sure about you depending on where you are right now, but it is so hot in Manila recently, with the heat index surpassing 40 degrees centigrade. And staying 40 actually if we're quite lucky. While it is easy to ascribe it to natural climate patterns taking its due course, a lot of it is due to how humans now and even in the past decades have shaped out our cityscapes. Some cities have suspended in-person classes in the Philippines due to this and other factors, such as transport strike. This is the reality of Southeast Asian cities. Sure, Southeast Asian cities are a cradle for endless opportunities, but they're also a bastion of a multitude of challenges. Indeed, cities are a melting pot of the world's wicked problems. Thus today, this afternoon, we are thrilled to have with us two individuals who have been working on the nexus of urban sustainability and human-centered designs. We shall be hearing big words such as climate change adaptation, nature-based solutions, native trees, and biodiversity education, among others. More than the big words, we shall see how these big terms fit amidst the bustling city. We shall be hearing about the tensions or the forces in the city and the intentions to navigate these forces. With that, I hope you are excited with the insightful afternoon ahead of us. I thank you for joining us this afternoon, and I do hope that we have a rich discussion and we enjoy doing so. Have a great afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar.
Thank you, Eman, for the warm welcome to the first public event of the AUN EEC year. Good afternoon once again. I am Zarina Saloma Akpedonu, Dean of the School of Social Sciences of Ateneo de Manila University. I am also a member of the steering committee of the AUN EEC. Now, allow me to introduce the banner theme of AUN EEC this year. AUN EEC is going to host a series of events this 2024 under the banner theme of Rewilding the City, a call to action on urban sustainability. Coming from the tail end of the pandemic in 2023, AUN EEC hosted an array of events under the banner theme Environmental Reconciliation and Restoration. Through the webinar, conference, and workshop, one of the emerging ideas is in discussing restoration of ecology. Heavy focus is given to natural landscapes such as mountains and seasides, but much lesser attention is given in urban areas. This is ironic given that compelling evidence points to rapidly modernizing cities as a source of immense impact to the state of the environment. Cities, however, are not just a source of problems. They provide a spectrum of opportunities in various aspects, including livelihood and economic progress, education, research and innovation, and personal development, among others. Global leaders are cognizant of this viewpoint of the city. For one, building upon the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration 2021 to 2030, which coincidentally was the AUN EEC banner theme last year, the United Nations Environment Program launched the Generation Restoration Project 2023 to 2025. This initiative seeks to promote restoration and reconciliation with nature, particularly in an urban setting, including some cities in Southeast Asia and Greater Asia as examples. The focus on environmental movement in an urban setting is in fact integral to ecological education. With this in mind, today's event, the Revisiting the City webinar, will explore the pivotal role of Southeast Asian cities in advancing sustainability education, especially among the youth. Specific key questions to be explored in the webinar include: what are the tensions in the urban landscape that present as challenges in environmental conservation and sustainability education? How have individuals and organizations navigated these tensions to promote their intentions for a more sustainable urban environment? Even with these tensions and intentions, why do cities remain to play an integral role in mainstreaming ecological education and culture? Thus, this afternoon, we shall have two speakers. Our first speaker, Dr. Eric Wolf, will discuss the tensions in the city, while our second speaker, Ms. Arceli Tungol, will talk about the intentions in the city. This will be followed by a question and answer. During this time, we invite you to not only to ask your questions to the panelists, but also to share and open up opportunities for partnerships in mainstreaming urban sustainability. At the end of the program, the Secretariat will share announcements regarding the upcoming events and membership details. With that, let us get the ball rolling. At this point, we are now going to hear from our first speaker, Dr. Erich Wolf, on the tensions in the city. Dr. Eric Wolf is an interdisciplinary researcher and educator currently working as a research fellow at the Asian School of the Environment of Nanyang Technological University in Singapore. He finished his bachelor's degree in civil engineering and master's in geotechnics from Universidade de Brasilia with visiting exchange programs in Czech Technological University in Prague and University of Liège. He finished his PhD from Monash University, working on community-based sense-making of water and conventional flood modeling frameworks in data-poor areas in Indonesia and Fiji. At different points of his career, he has worked with sectors from different parts of the globe, such as National Department of Transport Infrastructure of the Brazilian government, University of Pennsylvania, the RMIT University in Melbourne, which allowed him to view cities in different contexts. The work of Dr. Wolf delves into urban sustainability and resilience, citizen science, nature-based infrastructure provision, and climate change adaptation. His most recent publications examine citizen science and other participatory methods for integrating nature into urban planning and interrogate how communities can contribute to more nuanced and democratic decision-making. With this, we can see how his work focuses on bringing out the different voices in order to explore solutions to urban problems. To deliver a talk titled Nature-Based Solutions in Southeast Asia, a review of the literature and future perspectives, let us please welcome with a warm round of virtual applause, Dr. Erich Wolf. Dr. Wolf, the floor is yours. Okay, we cannot hear you, Dr. Wolf.
Sorry, minor technical issues. We thought that after so many years of online presentations, we would have it figured out now, but I was struggling to be able to unmute myself. Thank you very much for the very kind words, Jane, Zarina, and thank you very much, Emmanuel, and the whole team for the invitation. It's a great, great pleasure to be here with you and to discuss nature-based solutions in Southeast Asia today. As a brief introduction, I think you've already heard enough about me, but I would like to share as well that I'm originally from Brazil. So I also have some background in the post-colonial contexts in which I know Philippines is also inserted, and all these countries that we are pushing forward to create our own identities and to go past these colonial mindsets and thinking about the future together. So I'm very happy to have these South-South collaborations, learning from each other. I'm going to share my screen and can start the presentation. I believe you can see my screen. So, okay, as it was already said, I am originally from Brazil, but I'm based now in Singapore. And I wanted to start here my presentation with just this very emblematic image of nature-based solutions in Southeast Asia. This is what Singapore has been putting forward as the big postcard of nature-based solutions. And this is what I'm going to discuss today. But I also want us to provoke ourselves should think a little bit more about what other types of nature-based solutions are there, and how can we push the boundaries of this, and thinking about these tensions in the city. How should we develop the future nature-based solutions and the future sustainable cities? So in my presentation, I'm going to talk very briefly about what is a nature-based solution. Then we're going to have a quick look at the literature review, what is already out there. I think it's very unfair for us to say that we don't know nothing. We know a lot of things already. And then think about what is the future? What does the future hold for us in terms of nature-based solutions and sustainability in cities in Southeast Asia? And then we're going to conclude with just future thoughts and maybe gaps in the literature of things that hopefully we can work together and collaborate in the future. So what is a nature-based solution? Obviously, I want to think about the super trees in Singapore, but I also want to think beyond that and think about what makes sense in Brazil, what makes sense in the Philippines, what makes sense in Indonesia. And so I'll start with this very brief definition for those of you who have not heard about this name before. It's a very buzzword. Nature-based solutions has gained a lot of attention in the last few years. The International Union for Nature Conservation in 2016 made this report that has this very iconic figure. And this is what usually people put on the screen when they say nature-based solutions. I don't want you to read the whole thing, but basically, let's say that nature-based solutions need necessarily to have a potential to address a societal challenge and to provide a human well-being and biodiversity benefit. So what societal challenges are we talking about? We could be talking about providing clean water to people. We could be talking about food security. We could be talking about heat mitigation. We could be talking about climate change mitigation in general. And obviously, if you cut down a forest and you plant potatoes, you might be solving food insecurity, but that does not have a biodiversity benefit. So when we talk about nature-based solutions, we necessarily are talking about things that are good for humans and for nature. And in that sense, we would think about green roofs, green walls, wetland systems, reforestation of rivers, urban parks. All of these, if well designed, they have a potential to create habitat, to improve biodiversity, while at the same time supporting human well-being and addressing societal challenges. So that's, in a nutshell, what are we talking about? Obviously, Singapore took this in the Singapore style, which is to do very big projects that are internationally known. This is the rooftop of Capita Spring, which has become a tourist attraction in Singapore. Is one of these postcard projects that you see when you open a textbook of what is a nature-based solution. This is a rooftop garden, and it is very important. First of all, it provides shade, so it reduces temperature to some extent, but it also provides flowers and food for people here. Obviously, this is a luxury development. People here are usually using food here just on a recreational stage. It's not necessarily for food security, but this has benefits for people and potentially for nature as well. Okay, very good. That's what a nature-based solution could look like, and very often what it looks like in Europe or in Singapore, in the United States. But I want us to think about what makes sense in other contexts. And this is what we see in Southeast Asia very often, and in Brazil, and in Latin America, and in Africa. Those are areas in the world where we still have a very large portion of the population that does not have access to basic government services. We still struggle to deal with urban development and taking care of our rivers and our forests. We are increasingly being affected by heat waves, by floods. There's still challenges with sanitation. There's still challenges with loss of biodiversity in cities. So this is arguably where we need the most nature-based solutions. It's not on the rooftop of a very beautiful building in New York. It's on the ground where cities are growing, is where people need the services. This is where we should be thinking about nature-based solutions, and how do they look like here? So this is the provocation I'm starting here. And maybe one project that is a little bit closer to us that we could think about is Benchakiti Park in Bangkok. This is a very beautiful park. It is a reuse of an old industrial area. This was a tobacco factory grounds, and then the Bangkok government decided to redirect this to become a public park. As you can see, it's a public park in the middle of Bangkok, in an area where we need more entertainment, we need more areas for people to have access to nature, we need flood mitigation, so this thing, when it rains, the water accumulates here and not in someone's house, right? So it has multiple services. It's cultural, is a space for sports, is a space for jogging, it is well-being, and it's a biodiversity hotspot. But it's also still a very much top-down government project. And there's still a lot of struggle here for people to understand that when we have nature that looks a bit unruly, this is where the benefit is maximum. We have more biodiversity when we allow nature to be a little bit unruly as well. So this is a tension in the city. People sometimes want lawns and beautiful parks that are European style, but hey, this is what Southeast Asia looks like, and this is how our nature looks like in our biodiversity. So we should be thinking about nature here, nature-based solutions here. So what we did was a systematic literature review, as good academics always love to do. We looked for nature-based solutions in the most vulnerable areas in Southeast Asia. So we just looked at informal settlements, where people still live in precarious living conditions, where governments not necessarily think that those are areas that should be occupied, and where people need the most. So we looked at all these projects, and we tried to find what is already out there. What can we learn from what already is happening? So my provocation is, while in Europe, nature-based solutions might look something very elaborate and very elegant and a tourist attraction, in Southeast Asia, it might look like this. So I've selected on purpose here. This is one of the projects we found in the Philippines. This is by one of your colleagues, Irene Grace Andau. I believe Irene is doing her PhD in Australia right now. And she published this article about people doing gardening. Really, that's what it is. And these are things that people have done in Southeast Asia and in Latin America for centuries. It's just, we need to recognize the practices in local gardening. When people use native species, when people are able to provide gardening, that is also biodiverse, that is also connected with the local needs and with the local ecosystems. This should be recognized as a nature-based solution. So we need to stop just thinking about the European examples as the only examples that are worth, and thinking about how can we find a way that is not just keeping communities like in kampongs in Indonesia doing their small gardening, but for supporting them and making that gardening provide food security and biodiversity, and having these initiatives, this traditional knowledge being the type of nature-based solution that we have in the region. So these are other examples that we found. Some are a bit more elaborate, like the constructed wetland project in Makassar, Indonesia. This is a project where I did my PhD. But we also have more simple projects, like in the Pacific, planting mangroves is a very popular topic right now, or planting trees just to provide shades in cities, or even people just doing manual ditches to infiltrate water that are very common in the Solomon Islands and in the Pacific. And obviously just community gardens in general, I think they are the most important and the ones where we should be getting inspiration and expanding them. So this is some of the things we found from these almost 40 projects. Most of them were obviously community gardens, but we also found a lot of revegetation projects, green open spaces, sometimes just not occupying an area. If you know an area is going to flood, just don't build on it. And that's already a nature-based solution, in a sense that if you can protect that area, that is critical, and allow biodiversity to flourish there and humans to stay away, that can already be considered a benefit for biodiversity and for humans. Planting trees, wetlands, and infiltration devices are also projects that we found. And what are the benefits? So obviously food security and soil stabilization, stopping erosion are some of the big ones. But obviously we need to recognize that people care more when these things are beautiful. when these things produce economic opportunities or when they are recreational spaces. And if they can align as well with biodiversity and water quality. So that's the beauty of nature-based solutions. They could also be multifunctional. A wetland system, it stops floods, it improves water quality, it improves biodiversity, it's a cultural space, it has all the benefits that could be collected together to act as a theater, a drainage system, a dam, and so many other infrastructures that we can use nature to provide us those benefits. So I think those are the things that we should be having in mind when we see cities that are still going very much into building concrete drains, building dams, removing trees and putting air conditioning. We can achieve these things with nature. So I think that's the potential of nature-based solutions. So in future perspectives, this is the work I'm working on right now. This is in Bangkok as well. These are housing projects. So this is the Ban Mong Kong program, which in Thai means secure housing. And we're working together with colleagues at Thammasat University in Bangkok to think about these models of housing. Obviously, in various aspects, this is a very successful project. They are being able to provide housing to a lot of people. The issue here is that we are still seeing that nature is an afterthought. The projects are not designed with big trees and with space for nature. They are designed with just those little pockets. And then people, after 30 years living there, they start planting their own things. But that was not in the design. So I think we need to think a little bit more about what type of nature do we want? Do we want this nature that only looks very manicured, very traditional, almost European, right? And this doesn't provide shade. This doesn't provide biodiversity. It provides aesthetics and culture and identity, but we are not getting the full picture here. What about the native plants? What about the food production? What about the pollinators, the bees and the butterflies that are disappearing in our cities? So I want us to think a little bit more, and these are examples from Thailand, but think about the examples in the Philippines, like this. People in this region have been connected to nature on multiple levels for millennia. These are people in Bangkok that they have turned a termite mound into a shrine, and they relate to nature not only on what can we take out of it, but as a spiritual symbol. People pray for nature. So having that as part of how we design cities is very important, that we connect with all these levels of meaning and all these ways of seeing sustainability that go just beyond transactional. I plant a tree because I get mangoes. I plant a tree because it provides shade. Yes, but also I plant a tree because I feel that nature has a right to exist, or because that tree is important for me. It symbolizes my culture. It symbolizes, in Thailand, yellow flowers symbolize the late king, that people connected a lot. So having those different meanings in mind, I think is very important. So yes, I think this is the publication that we did about this, and this is still under peer reviewed, but you can definitely look this up online. It's already available as a preprint. And we were asking people in the government what types of nature they think would work. And they were always like, oh, let's plant more trees. You can see here the high percentages for tree planting and for gardens. And when you go to the reality, people are actually already doing green walls. It's an improvised green wall, but people are doing it. It already exists. And the tree that in your imaginary might look perfect, in reality, the tree is actually very complicated. There's not much space. And then we end up with these trees that are very sick because they're all constantly cut because they are interfering with power lines, with traffic. So we need to think more creatively, just beyond the imaginary tree and the idea that a green roof cannot exist, and think about, can we change those things, right? So I think on the interest of time, I'm going to move on to my conclusions, but that's what I'm thinking about. Like, these are the projects that we still see as happening in the peripheries of big cities in Southeast Asia. People are being able, after a little while, to access homes. Sometimes it takes decades. Sometimes people are living in very dangerous conditions. But once they achieve the dream of having their own homes, we still see nature as having very little space. And that's not only in nature's account, but we also lose from that because we are not getting all these benefits. We're losing these connections with nature. So if you go anywhere in Southeast Asia, you will see pictures like this. People are trying to bring nature back. They just don't have space for it. So let's think more broadly about this, and let's think as designers, urban planners, geographers, biologists, ecologists, how can we make cities part of nature and nature parts of cities from the beginning, not as an afterthought? So yeah, I just wanted to thank you for the invitation and conclude with this diagram that we did in another publication. So basically what we are advocating here is the big problem of nature-based solutions is when someone arrives and says, oh, this worked in New York, therefore it's going to work in Manila. And we're like, no, we need to stop these approaches that are about no participation or about manipulating people, saying, oh, it's good for you, you accept it. We need to move from that. And not only about consulting people, I want to build this, may I? No, we want to move into, let's engage with people, what identities and values they already have, what uses of nature they already have. Can we learn from what already existing in cities and use that to integrate nature into our projects of the future, cities of the future? We need less futuristic, imaginary, floating metal cities, and we need more cities that look like kampongs, that look like the peripheries of Manila, that looks like how people engaged with farms in Brazil for hundreds of years. That's my agenda, and that's what I wish to continue discussing with you. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm very open to continuing the conversations and to collaborating with Ateneo de Manila in the future.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wolf. It was a very clear discussion of what nature-based solutions are, and the reminder that the uncelebrated traditional knowledge, everyday practices are nature-based solutions alongside the celebrated, sometimes upper class, upscale developments in the famous cities of the world, such as Gardens by the Bay. So we note your call to make the city part of nature and nature part of the city. With that, the AUN EEC now would like to launch its Instagram engagement activity, which we hope our young audience members participate in. May we call on Mr. Carl Alansagay, AUN EEC Secretariat, to share more about this activity.
Thank you, Dr. Bopi. And again, my name is Carl from the AUN EEC Secretariat. So at this segment, we'd like to invite everyone to join on this Instagram challenge, which is our first online engagement this year for the network titled Recapturing the City. This aims to engage with the Southeast Asian youth to showcase best examples of tensions in their city. And we also aim to, for this engagement, to raise awareness about these tensions. So here are the mechanics. First, of course, you have to take a photo of a scene in your city that captures a particular tension. Examples include showing a tug between culture and modernity, or environment and progress. So please submit an original photo, but you may also use Instagram filters. Also take note that we will not accept AI-generated images for this. And then after that, please follow our Instagram page, that is AUN.EEC on Instagram. After that, please be creative as well in telling a story with your caption. And here are some prompts to get you started. So for example, as a Southeast Asian youth, how do I navigate the tensions in my city? Second one would be, how do I balance these tensions with my intentions to make the city more livable? So we want everyone to be open and be creative as much as possible. And then don't forget to use our hashtags, AUNEEC, Rewilding the City, Recapturing the City, and Let's Capture the City. You can also add more hashtags if you want to. So, and what will you get after if your submission is selected. So you will win a waived registration fee for the upcoming 2024 AUN EEC conference this August, and your photo could be featured in our Instagram feed. So we really hope to have your submission soon. So watch out for more updates and information that will be posted in our Instagram page. Again, submissions will start this April and will end by July 2024. So please, again, follow us, AUN.EEC on Instagram. And thank you very much. I give back the floor to you, Dr. Gopi. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. We hope to receive submissions from our audience. It is simple initiative done only via Instagram, but we hope to raise awareness on the tensions in the city. From tensions, let us move to intentions. At this point, we are now going to hear from our second speaker, Ms. Arceli Tungol, on the intentions in the city. Ms. Arceli Tungol is the founder of the social civic group in Facebook, Philippine Native Trees Enthusiast, or PNTE, in 2013. PNTE is a group of passionate in the promotion and mainstreaming of native trees. Ms. Cel is a graduate of the University of the Philippines in Diliman and has a certificate on community and stakeholder engagement in the conservation, restoration, and management of tropical forest landscape in Environmental Leadership Training Institute, Yale University. She is currently one of the trustees of the Foundation for the Philippine Environment, which is dedicated to biodiversity conservation. She is also a Protected Area Management Board member of the Ninoy Aquino Parks and Wildlife Center, one of the active biodiversity centers amidst the bustling dynamic backdrop of Quezon City in Metro Manila. Through her hobby in photography and a passionate native tree advocate, Ms. Cel is able to create awareness of our Philippine native trees through her photographs. She was the lead photographer of various books on Philippine native trees, and recently she published a book for PNTE entitled Ally, Philippine Native Trees at the Victor O. Ramos Arboretum. To deliver a talk titled Appreciation of Philippine Native Trees for Biodiversity Conservation, let us please welcome, with a warm round of virtual applause, Ms. Cel Tungol. Cel, the floor is yours. Cel, we still cannot hear you. Let's see what we can fix on our end. Cel, can you try again?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Right. So let me share my screen. Hold on. Okay. Okay, thank you very much again, AUN, for inviting me to talk about appreciating native trees for biodiversity conservation. Hold on. Okay, let me share with you the story of PNTE. So it started as an inspiration from Leonard Go. Leonard Go is one of the premier botanists in the Philippines. However, he passed on in 2010. And I still remember what he told me about, we cannot protect what we do not know. So if you want to protect a specific species, then we need to learn more about it. We need to love it so that we can protect it. Hence, I created the Philippine Native Tree Enthusiasts. It's a loose organization in Facebook where I'm able to reach like-minded individuals with the same passion for the love of native trees. And today we have about 23,700 members. These are followers and members from different sectors of society. So we have people from government, from the academe, from professionals, no, and most of them hobbyists. Again, we are not SEC registered. We are a loose organization. However, we survived. No, we are now on our 10th year. Our mission and vision, a vision where a nation that recognizes the key role of Philippine native trees in the preservation of Philippine biodiversity. And our mission here is to educate the Filipino people about the importance of native trees in the environment. And hopefully we can inspire them to move projects on their own in mainstreaming these native trees. So I see a trend where there's increased awareness now of appreciation of our native trees, and several PNTE communities have been created. I see some members from the provinces, no? So PNTE was established in Metro Manila, and we have encouraged other groups to group themselves, to organize themselves in the provinces. So we have 11 in Luzon, 5 in Visayas, and 8 in Mindanao. So some of the participants here might want to join these groups for better appreciation of our native trees. We talk a lot about climate change and what do we do about it? We want to save the environment. And this particular photo here, I got from the Upper Bikutan National High School, where they ask questions like, bakit sobrang polluted na ng hangin? So why is the air polluted? Bakit bumabaha? Why is it flooded? Bakit sobrang init? How come it's too hot? And all of this, the response is, walang puno, or there are no trees. Hence, the easiest way, which was presented a while ago, is to really plant trees. No? And the question is, are we planting the right trees in our neighborhood or in our place? So let's go back and understand what is a native tree. So some terminologies here. You have indigenous, which is a native to our country, but is also native in other countries. Native means it's naturally growing in our country without human intervention, which means nobody planted it here, no? It's naturally growing. Endemic is again also native, but it is only found in our country or in a certain locality. On the flip side, you'll see the other kind of trees, which are the exotic or alien. These are foreign species introduced by man outside its natural range. And another problematic exotic species is the invasive alien species. So these are introduced, non-native species creating havoc in our environment. Okay, you'll be hearing a lot of these terminologies as we progress, or even in your research, you'll be hearing these terminologies often. And I'd like to put in some minutes on understanding invasive alien species, because these invasive alien species have already colonized most of our areas, people would tend to think that these are native species. And instead of helping the environment, we are doing harm. So let us go through this. So oftentimes, I flash this photo and I ask my audience whether this is exotic or native. And some would say it's native, when actually this is an invasive alien species, which is mahogany. And mahogany is not Philippine mahogany, no? There is no single tree called Philippine mahogany. The mahogany that we see around us is actually Swetenia macrophylla, which is from the South America. And the term Philippine mahogany is a trade name for a collective species. So it's a group of premium timber, okay? So these are usually our dipterocarps, no? Which are your apitong, bagtikan, white lawaan, giho, tangile. And these are premium hardwoods. And we've seen a decline in their number because of massive deforestation. So again, mahogany that you see is not the Philippine mahogany. Some of you may have visited this place. This is a man-made mahogany forest in Bohol. Okay, I also did a stop here to take some photos because the area is very beautiful. It's very quiet. No, it's green. And it's really breathtaking when you visit this place. However, you'll notice that there are no birds, there are no vines, there are no monkeys, or the tarsiers cannot be found here. Actually, Bohol is known for tarsiers, but tarsiers are not in this environment because they don't provide food for them. If you see down below, you see very dry and dead soil. And according to Dr. James Lafranchi, 10 hectares of mahogany forest is actually a biodiversity dead zone. No? So the message here is let us not plant mahogany because it will displace our native species. It has an allelopathic characteristics. No, it inhibits the growth of our native trees. And if you notice, if you plant them in your farms, your fruit trees will bear low fruits. No, it will not. The fruit bearing trees may produce some fruits, but it's not in its maximum potential. So we discourage people from planting mahogany in schools, in farms, and in your forests. No. Some alien invasive species common no, in the urban areas that we see are the Gymnelina, Acacia, Paper Mulberry, Ipil-ipil, your Palo Santo, very beautiful flowers but invasive. You have African tulip, also very beautiful flowers. You have giant teak and mahogany. So these are actually invasive alien species that we see around, that we think they're very beautiful. Some would also think that they are native or naturalized, but actually they're posing a threat to our environment. So saving the planet, do not plant this as invasive alien species. Then we move on to why do we need native trees? No? Of course, trees provide oxygen. They also provide shade. They cool the environment. But what is so special about our native trees? And let me just show you. Number one, it promotes biodiversity. Our natural forest is actually made up of native trees, and these native trees have a symbiotic relationship with other living things. A lot of wildlife depend on our forest, and if ever we want to create the natural forest, we really need to go back and check what are the native trees that are thriving in the nearest natural forest in your area, and that is what you have to duplicate. No need to introduce the exotic species. Same is true with rewilding the city. We need to use native tree species. And I'll show you later more examples of native trees. I put in also a photo of a bird because if you hear birds in your place or in the forest, then that's a good indicator that you have a healthy forest. Here are a few interesting metrics on the Philippines biodiversity. We are one of the 17th megadiverse countries in the world. We have 70 to 80% of the world's biodiversity. So you really don't have to go out of the Philippines no, in order to see 70 to 80% because they're already here in the Philippines. And as far as native trees are concerned, we have 3,600. So we can choose from these 3,600 the right trees to plant in our area, in our green spaces. In terms of endemic species, no, we have very high endemism. As far as the plants are concerned, we have 65% endemic in the Philippines. Birds, we have 35% endemic in the Philippines. And as far as animals are concerned, 60 to 85% endemic in the Philippines. However, we ranked second as a biodiversity hotspot, no? Which means we have very high endemism, but we have suffered 70% loss in original vegetation, which means the habitat of our flora and fauna is really under threat, or even we really need to do something about raising that number. So number two, we have to native trees provide food to humans as well as to wildlife. No, so you have the himbabao. You also have the hold on. You have alibangbang, No, the fresh leaves are used to as a seasoning or sinigang, and you also have lubi-lubi for other dishes. Third, native trees beautifies the landscape and can tolerate our typhoons and drought being experienced in the Philippines. So examples of these are anahaw, what we tagged as our national leaf, and we also have nara, our national tree. Very beautiful in our landscapes. No? Number 4, native trees also is a source of alternative medicine. So in the past, we don't have drugstores, right? So people would rely on native trees, no, like the banaba for diabetes. You have lagundi for cough. You have kalingag or cinnamon for your upset stomach. Aside from that, our native trees also gives us a sense of culture and heritage. So here are some endemic species. You have ipil, pili rather, you have antipolo, and is. Okay? And this is an illustration of the architect Paulo Alcarazian showing Manila, Metro Manila, with some trees, no, around it. But he is projecting that soon, because of urbanization, we'll be having limited space. So with so much limited space, so where will we see our native trees in the future? So our native trees, most of them are now threatened, vulnerable, and endangered. Soon they might become extinct physically and extinct from the memories of the future generation. And I think our trees are calling for help, and I hope that we can assist them by, conserving them, by propagating them. And what can we do? No? We can start to identify native trees in your area, be aware of what is around you, whether it's exotic or native, for as long as we're able to identify this. There are tree walks happening in different areas. You can join them. 2, you can read more about native trees. In the past, we have very limited information about native trees, but now there are books available, and there's a group. You can join our group, the PNTE. In terms of conserving our native species, you can start gathering seeds or wildlings and start to nurture them. So this is actually my garden at home where it's already full of native trees, no, and seedlings. No? And once you have those, you can start planting them in your backyard or in your green spaces, open spaces. No? And this is what I like most, is leveraging on skills and influence to educate others about Philippine native trees. So in schools, you can encourage students to write more about native trees in their essay writing, or if you have symposium, you have a tree planting day, you have a classroom without walls, and do a lot of nature walks, expose the kids out to the outside world. And you can also do it with your hobby or work, if you're an artist, a photographer, then you can, incorporate native trees, so that we are able to educate more about our native trees, which are, I think, declining, or there's a very low appreciation of our native trees. No? Hopefully, we can develop a lot of native tree gardens too. Here are some examples of people using their skills and their influence. You have Mayor Tin Antonio and Councilor Carlo Ancla doing massive native tree nurseries in their locations, and then planting these native trees in schools, in churches, in open spaces. We have somebody from Globe Marketing who initiated seed packets, for as prizes in their promotions. We also have with us the USEC of DepEd, Department of Education, Elaine Pasqua, who pushed for school in a garden. No? Aside from vegetable gardening, he also pushed for the planting of native trees around the school as protection and to attract a lot of birds. No? We also have artists in the group, Cynthia Are, who started, painting painting and illustrating flowering native trees. No? And then stationaries and other corporate giveaways were done. We also have Lenny Sutcliffe, a homeowner of Ayala West Grove, who just planted native trees all over her village. And they won the ASEAN Green Initiative last year, for having a lot of native trees sustainable and in their sustainability projects. Aside from that, she also made a book on a guide to the West Grove trees, the native trees in West Grove. In terms of rewilding in the cities, it's really a problem because we really have limited space. We only can plant so much native trees. But still, there is hope because we have Ayala Estates and other conglomerates planting native trees around the estates. Other than Ayala, we have Robinsons and other conglomerates now embracing native trees in their estates. You have UP Diliman and other universities. Again, this photo is the Marine Science Institute in UP Diliman, where the late Edgardo Gomez planted several native trees around the campus, and the whole College of Science complex followed this example. I know in Ateneo they also started planting native trees. Together with the EDC, they have a lot of partners where EDC has started collecting 96 threatened species. And they started creating this biodiversity park in schools and in open spaces to make sure that these threatened species will have a sanctuary. And soon, future generation can go back and see them. We also have the Washington CSIP Garden of Native Trees. This is actually a gift of the Zwillig Group to Washington CSIP on his 90th birthday. So this is situated in UP Diliman as well. So we now see a lot of private arboreta and pocket gardens sprouting all over the city. Not only in Metro Manila, we also see a lot of activities happening elsewhere in the Philippines. You have a group in South Cotabato, in Alcala, Cagayan, in Romblon, and in Nabunturan pushing for massive tree planting initiatives. And so far, they've been very successful. Let me share with you the Green Initiative of the Philippine Native Tree Enthusiasts. So we were created in 2013. And in 2015, we did an assessment of how many arboreta we have in the Philippines. And, you can just see a handful of them. Okay. But 10 years later, I'm so happy to say that we have already made a mark in the country. And if you can see this map, it's really full of arboreta, pocket gardens that people have started creating. So it's not really the PNTE organization group that has created it. The PNTE is just an enabler. We introduced to them the concept about native trees and the beauty and the importance of native trees in our environment. And these individuals started to create arboreta, pocket gardens or pocket forests in their open spaces. So I hope that you will also do the same so that we can help the environment. Okay. This is my last 2 slides. I'd like to encourage you to get a copy of the PNTE book, Philippine Native Trees, and it covers 300 species of native trees for you to learn and to get and to discover. And I'd like to invite you also to join us in Facebook. That's Philippine Native Tree Enthusiasts. We will help you in identifying your trees, help you in germinating, in nurturing. There's a lot of discussions happening in the group. We also have seed exchange. So I'd like to see you there in this group soon. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Tungol, for your inspiring talk about Philippine native trees. I note that we also have participants, attendees from Myanmar and Vietnam. So maybe later we could also share about native trees in their countries. So I'm very happy to see that there have been several questions and comments sent in through chat. And please feel free to still send in your questions as the discussion flows. We have almost an hour to talk about tensions and intentions in the city. So let's start with a question that is for both Ms. Tungol and Dr. Wolf. It's a general question. Given the diversity of cultures, geographies, religions, and politics in the region, are there common themes in Southeast Asian cities, for example, on how we can promote urban sustainability among the youth in the region?
I can maybe share a few thoughts. I think that yes, there definitely are, and maybe for good or for bad, what unites Southeast Asia, I think many of the challenges are common, right? There is a big concern with climate change, with sea level rise. It's a region with many islands, with many coastal cities. There's a big concern with heat waves. There's a big concern with informal settlements. So our challenges are shared, and we see that even in the literature review, when we look at it, there is a big interest. For example, another topic that always shows up is air pollution, whether it's from cars or from industrial activity or from fires. So these are all things that unite the whole region. And I think many of these challenges are also cross-boundary. There's no way that Singapore can deal with air pollution alone, right? So I think ASEAN has been working very hard on trying to create these collaborations. And I think we should be thinking about how to involve civil society, how to involve government, and how to involve academia and collaborate across the region. So I think that's a very good question and a very good food for thought for all of us on how we can work together.
All right. You have a rejoinder, Ms. Tungol?
I think it's more of education. I mean, if we educate the youth, no, then there's hope that we can have them think of innovative ideas, no, on how to really have a sustainable society.
All right, so we have common issues, common problems and challenges, but also, as you said, opportunities that are commonly shared by the people in this region. Let me just go to Dr. Wolf's point. There's a question here. How can we effectively decolonize what we think as nature, and therefore think of it as nature-based solutions? I think at some point in time we talk about nature-based solutions. We seem to be talking about colonizing nature so that it will serve us, so that it will help solve our problems. But that's not the whole story, correct?
Yes, I think that's a very good point. And it's part of my work as well to be critical about it. I think we should be aware of where this literature comes from and what this terminology means, because yes, it was a terminology that gained a lot of attention in Europe. And from there, it's been taking over because of grants, because of researchers, because of the United Nations taking over. But yes, I think we should push to reframe what is a nature-based solution for us in our region, in the global south more broadly, right? And I definitely will tell people that I have problems with nature-based solution, the terminology in itself. Just saying that nature and us, two separate things, that's already something that I find it's problematic. Very often we should see us as part of nature. And the other thing is the solution part. So it's always about like a problem that needs solving, that comes externally. And rather, I think that sometimes it's a lot of it comes from inside and comes from inspiration of things that are already happening. So I think it is very important that we're critical about it, but my perspective is that we should take over and hijack that term and use it in our advantage in terms of supporting the projects that are already happening, in terms of attracting international attention, international projects, but doing things that in the way that they make sense for us. I think that's my position.
Well, Mr. Joaquin Victor Warren of UP Manila actually would like to go further. He said, I found your talk on nature-based solutions interesting, as most of us, well, I think everyone did, who are here today. However, given that you mentioned how European landscaping styles might not be the best solution for areas in the global south, after all, we always say you cannot plant coconut trees everywhere. Could you share any struggles you might be aware of in promoting the use of participatory nature-based solutions among urban development planners who may have a partiality to the European style?
Okay, I can. I think part of it is cultural, which is what Ms. Tungo was talking about as well. I think the way we see trees and the way we see nature, that there is a colonizing way of seeing nature, right? That we want nature to be manicured. So I think that is one component of it, is challenging that. But I also feel that that's part of my work. The work I've been publishing recently is on citizen science and how can we involve the community in part of the data collection and understanding our places. I think it is very important that we are aware that in Southeast Asian informal settlements, we very often don't have the data. So how do we design something for floods if we don't know where the floods happen? And then the decision maker will be very often saying, oh no, we don't need it, just put concrete, or we just get satellite imagery and things like that. So I think that is one big challenge, is for decision makers to understand that there is local knowledge, and that, for example, for floods, if you're designing to prevent floods, people on the ground living there are the biggest experts. If your house flooded, you know where the flood happens, right? So I think involving people in these conversations is probably the biggest challenge. And one of the things I'm very passionate about is how do we connect society and science and make sure that scientists can help society connect with government to advocate for better nature-based solutions that make sense in each space. It's a very big topic, but I think I got somewhat of the idea there.
Yes, you did. Thank you. In fact, well, academics like to invent words. So from interdisciplinarity, we have moved to transdisciplinarity, and we have been saying that transdisciplinarity is the higher form of interdisciplinarity, recognizing that knowledge resides not just in the academe, but in other, in communities, in other places and spaces that we usually do not expect them to reside. So thank you for that. Contribution, Dr. Wolf. Okay, for Ms. Tungol, it was very clear, you have been very clear with the call to not plant invasive alien species. But what do we do with Gemmelina, mahogany, and other native invasive alien species that are already thriving around us in our urban cities?
Yeah, that's a common question asked to me by the group, no? So if you have this invasive alien species, you can actually request from DENR the cutting of this invasive alien species. So they have already recognized that these are species that do not belong to the non-plantation area. So for example, if you have a school, if you have a farm, no, these species can be removed. If not, then you can just let them grow. But however, it has to be controlled. You have to remove the wildlings, which is very difficult to maintain. But again, the suggestion here is to remove them, to actually prevent them from further harming the environment. And of course, because they are invasive species, then they just multiply so fast. no? And our native species will be, you know, they're competing actually with our native species.
All right, thank you. Ms. Remy Amores of a local government unit, Muntinlupa. And I think this is really just to make sure that we have we get ideas on what trees we can plant in city streets that will not cause destruction on establishments and roads.
Yes, we already have a list of trees for urban areas, no? The Philippine Native Tree Enthusiasts, together with experts, recommended several trees. The Department of Environment and Natural Resources also have a list of species which are adapted to urban landscapes and to, you know, roadsides and small spaces.
All right.
And we can share that with you.
Okay. And then, but if you could just have a sample of the a sample. of
Okay.
trees.
So there are, you know, the common banaba, katmon, the CRs, balitbitan, things that you see around already, growing. I think there are already areas where native trees are being planted along the roadsides.
All right. That's really good to know, and we can emulate and do more of those initiatives. So let's look at the other question here from, well, we have a participant from West Visayas State University, Gio de Maulo. We understand that the 21st century has been a steady rise of technological advancements, and developing countries such as nations in Southeast Asia are ultimately given opportunity to catch up to the modern standards happening elsewhere. However, given the alarming indexes of global warming and climate change, such as the horrendous temperature, the heat index that we're experiencing right now in the Philippines, do you think that we could adapt technologies in monitoring, developing, and nurturing natural hotspots in our country? And which technologies? I think this relates to the question again of colonization of the life world, colonization of nature earlier. So Ms. Tungol and Dr. Wolf. So this is a question about technology. What is the role of technology?
Yeah. Well, I think a little bit of what I can continue sharing as well on citizen science, for example. Part of the work I did during my PhD was in Indonesia and Fiji. So we were working with communities living in kampongs in Makassar, Indonesia. And what we were using as a tool for citizen science was mostly mobile phones. We all have it. Everybody uses WhatsApp, right? So the idea is we needed to collect flood data to design a wetland system, and no one knew how to do it. And I was like, if you just visit it, you see the level of the houses. So people already know it, and people are already taking photos and documenting these floods. Basically what we did, we went there and we put a gauge and we asked people to take photos regularly because they already were interested. And it was in their favor, because if we knew it better, we would design a better system to prevent floods there. So the technology there, which is something very simple, and we know that not always good, right? We know that social media and WhatsApp addiction are problems as well. It's not always good, but we knew that basically by using that technology in our favor, we could access data and not only collect data, but create a new connection with the people. And obviously that we can use satellite imagery, we can use other types of GIS, georeferenced information. There are many of those that are available online, and they can do magical things. The thing that I find challenging is when we just do it using digital tools provided by NASA, and we don't connect to people on the ground. That's, I think, what we cannot do. Is we can leverage all these amazing tools that are out there, but we cannot forget about the cultural side, about the meaning, and about how people relate to it. Otherwise, we design something that looks beautiful, and then it falls in disrepair because the mayor changed, or because people don't care about it, or because people think that that plant smells or creates rats or something like that. So you need to know what people think about it and how they connect to it, and educate them or share the experience to design a city that is actually inclusive and that has nature and valuable nature that people value.
All right. Asel, Ms. Tungor?
Yes. Oo. So I think technology is very helpful, no? For number one, we see a lot of these new applications coming out where you just snap a tree and then or a plant, and then it gives you the identification of this species. But we do not have that for the Philippine native species. These are usually the exotic ones, no? So once we are able to gather this information, then we can be able to educate more people about our native trees. Like, when you snap or when you take a photo of a native tree, it tells you right away what is this tree and what are the uses of these trees. The technology can also help in identifying where are the available areas where we can plant more native trees. No, where are there areas or open spaces where we can, rewild rewild the areas, no? If this is available, then we can definitely contribute to rewilding in the city.
Okay, that your responses actually connects to this question about love for I mean, how do we allow the you how do we enable the young people to foster, I mean, to develop love for native flora and fauna. The Buddhist monk and teacher Thich Nhat Hanh once said something similar to Miss Cell's sharing. Understanding is love's other name. How can we integrate knowledge of our native flora in education without boring our students? So you have this answer that technology, taking pictures, putting it on. I mean,
Taking
also,
pictures, yeah, encouraging students to go for tree walks, no, and showing them the real tree. In the Philippines, people, when I ask them, what is the national tree? Immediately people will say Nara. But if I ask them, have you seen a Nara tree? No, they haven't seen one. So if you look at there's really a disconnect here, what we're teaching, we are not really showing them in the real life. And it's only when they go out that they really see how beautiful our native trees are and that they have to promote it.
Dr. Wolf, is your work with technology also geared towards increasing appreciation and love? Or is it something more technical in that sense?
Yeah, well, what we used citizen science for was more in the direction of documenting floods. So that was not necessarily for appreciation of nature, but there is a very big community of citizen scientists as well. I think one of the big platforms is called iNaturalists, and very similar to what Ms. Tunga was talking about. There is a platform where you can, like, there's a bug that appeared in your kitchen and looks very strange. You take a photo and you upload it there, and there's a community of researchers that keep an eye on what is being posted. And that has been used to identify invasive species that appeared in a new place, or to identify, for example, which birds are appearing in each season. So it's data that is relevant for scientists, and at the same time is a platform where people enter that data and they hear feedback. The researcher answers them. The researcher says, hey, it's not that one, or it's actually that one. So there are many tools that allow us to engage in a two-way relationship. It's not just us educating them, but them providing something and we providing something back. And I think that a lot of the work as well is reconnecting with ancestral knowledge and all the ways in which people related to nature before. I think there is a lot that we are losing, obviously, with digital tools and social media. So yeah, the power of education. We need to be engaging more people and taking them outdoors and talking about what are the ecological values of nature, what are the cultural values of nature, right? So it's like, what are the flowers that mean something here? What are the materials that have been historically used? And yeah, these are all part of a decolonizing way of seeing nature, and champion local knowledge and perspectives.
So if I
Okay, ba?
get it right, the responses that you and Miss Tungol actually gave are returning, are coming home to the same point. It promotes care and love for the city. I mean, the beauty of trees, but also the endangered beauty of the city because of there's floods and other challenges. So I think the work that you do actually points about love for nature, for the environment. And there's another theme that I got from your sharing is actually that technology is simply a magnifier of human intentions, and you have been warning us about that. So it's not enough that we take pictures, that we use our phones, our cameras. The intentions are also very important, not just the technology. Right. There is a question. So we have, I think this afternoon, we have been inspired that we can do things in the city from our own little world, in our own little ways. But there is a question from Zin Nue Mint. Well, this is the approach to sustainable urban development, which we can leapfrog. But there is a concern about the land price, the land value that is implicated when we apply nature-based solution, as the land in cities are far more expensive, even in urban, in peri-urban areas. Well, this is a concern or a comment. But yeah, let's turn this into a question. So would it be possible to have urban, I mean, what are the limits or what are the possibilities of urban-based or urban nature-based solution in urban areas, given the economic demands, cost opportunities?
Yes, that is an amazing question. It's very important because we might have all the intentions. We know that when the market comes in, the market will look for, hey, I could be building a luxury condominium here. Why would I keep this primary forest, right? So I think part of the answer is obviously there is a cost of opportunity, and we need to be aware of that and go beyond idealistic views and understand that we need to talk to the market. I think that's where I'm trying to get to. And part of it is the role of scientists as well, because there is an emerging field that not always love it, also because I think there are some challenges in terms of how we frame nature just as a service. But there's a very big literature in ecosystem services and ecosystem service assessment. So that is a big role for science, that we can develop tools to measure these benefits of nature. So if we can say that keeping that wetland will prevent 2 neighborhoods from going underwater, we might be able to pitch, don't build that luxury apartment complex there, because you will build it and it will be underwater, and you will cause you more damage in the long term, not only for private developers, but also for the government. Like you'll gain the immediate tax from selling this land, but later on, you will need to invest a lot in drainage systems and in emergency systems, because you need to rescue people here every year. So if we can measure this, and as academia build this knowledge base on how do we measure temperature reduction, how do we measure flood mitigation, how do we measure well-being, and Singapore is very good at this. Singapore has put in its policy from the beginning that having nature in the city improves productivity. So if we want to talk to the market, I think that is something that we should not have a taboo about, and being able to quantify the value of nature in the city is an important way that we can leverage to protect nature. So converting these benefits in monetary value is not something that I feel it's fully aligned with my values, but I think it is important to dialogue with different stakeholders. So I'll leave it there as a possibility.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Wolf. Ms. Tungal, do you also feel the market impinging on your good intentions?
Yes, very much, very much. No, so it's like instead of planting trees or plant or in a particular area, of course, when it's a valuable estate, right? So instead of building a house or a building in that area, why plant trees, right? So it's actually very difficult. In our organization, we're having difficulty looking for areas where we can plant these endangered trees. The area is really getting smaller and smaller. It is actually, I think, government who should take a stand in securing these areas, in classifying them as, parks, protected areas. So maybe cities can have a dedicated area. If you remember the one in Manila where Arroceros Park was to be converted to a basketball court, no? And then people there clamored to retaining that park. So and then I guess what Dr. Eric is saying is for as long as we have data and for as long as we have government who is willing to listen, then we might be able to convince them to retain these green spaces instead of converting them into infrastructure.
All right. I think from both your responses, you have actually given our audience, many, I think, of our audience today are students. You have just given us a list of things, the knowledge gaps that we can fill in as we do our studies, as we become professionals later on. But I think we should do it as soon as possible. So with that, thank you so much for answering the questions and that came our way. That's all the time we have for the open forum. Thank you very much for the insightful questions and comments. So we would like to thank once again Dr. Erich Wolf and Ms. Sel Tungo. May we ask everyone to please turn on your cameras if you're able for our group photo.
Hi, everyone. There are a lot of us in the Zoom room right now, so we all fit in 8 frames. So I'd like to ask everyone to please keep your smiles on your face as we go through each of the screens. So I'm taking the first picture now in 3, 2, 1. Thank you very much. Now on to the second page. Taking the photo in 3, 2, 1. Thank you very much. And now for the third page, there are a lot of us in our growing community. In 3, 2, 1. Thank you very much. Now onto the fourth page. So we are halfway there, everyone. 3, 2, 1. Thank you very much. And taking the photo now in 3, 2, 1. Last 3 pages. Taking the photo in 3, 2, 1. All right, and now on to the last page. We're nearly there, everyone. 3, 2, 1. And thank you very much, everyone.
All right, thank you for your cooperation for the photos. I will now read the citation or token of appreciation. Certificate of appreciation is presented to Dr. Erich Wolf for his valuable contribution as a speaker on the webinar titled Rewilding the City, held on 16th day of April 2024 via Zoom, signed Emmanuel D. Delocado, PhD, Executive Director, ASEAN University Network on Ecological Education and Culture. Certificate of Appreciation is presented to Ms. Arceli Tungol for her valuable contribution as a speaker on the webinar titled Rewilding the City, held on the 16th day of April 2024 via Zoom, signed Emmanuel D. Delocado, PhD, Executive Director, ASEAN University Network on Ecological Education and Culture. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you very much, Dr. Wolf and Dr. Ms. Tungol. I will turn you over now to Dr. Emmanuel Delocado, Director of AUN EEC, to share with us the upcoming events of the network.
Thank you again, Dr. Eric and Michelle, for your valuable contributions. We learned a lot this afternoon. It was a dynamic discussion as well, and we of course thank our participants for pitching in their questions, of course, that truly deepened our discussion this afternoon. Okay, so this is just the first of the numerous events of AUN EEC for this year. And the Secretariat went wild with providing titles for upcoming events under the banner theme, Revisiting the City. On the next slide, we shall see the list of activities that we have. So we have this afternoon, Revisiting the City webinar. Come August, we will have Rewilding the City conference. Come October, we will have Reimagining the City workshop. And then earlier, we launched also the Instagram engagement activity, Recapturing the City. But later on this year, we shall have an Instagram Reels competition called Reviving the City. So all these events are centered on ecological education in the context of city, as we believe in the value of urban sustainability. Aside from the city-themed events, we will also have a roundtable discussion on education for sustainable development, one of our on-site events coming from the pandemic. So allow me to talk some more about some of these events. The Recapturing the City Instagram engagement activity was presented earlier, and the Secretariat noted that when it was discussed, we instantly received a lot of likes on Instagram. So thank you. I hope that's a sign of your participation. It's quite simple. Just take a picture of a scene from your city, which shows a particular tension, right? It's simple as that. Environment versus economy, or cultural preservation versus modernity. Though, of course, as we learned also from today, and as we will be hearing more late in the other activities of AUN EEC, these tensions can be navigated properly to still mainstream urban sustainability. Our major event for this year is the 2024 AUN EEC Conference on Ecological Education and Culture, titled Rewilding the City. Ayan. So I hope you will join us on August 16. That's a Wednesday. The conference is just one day and will be completely online. We are organizing it in partnership with another network, AUN Sustainable Cities and Urban Development of Universitas Indonesia. And we will see some bullet points here. There you go. The registration fee, similar to last year, is quite small. So for those who are part of institutions or members of AUNEC, you get a discounted price of just $4 or 200 pesos. For institutions who are not yet members of AUNEEC, your registration fee would be $10 or 500 pesos. How to be a member of AUNEEC, we'll talk about that later. For this conference, we're happy that for the first time, we shall be opening publication opportunities for those who will be presenting their papers. And thus, we would like we will soon open the call for paper presentations under the following thematic areas: ecological issues in the city, such as flooding, subsidence, forest fires, haze, etc. Cities as a pedagogical space. So how the city can teach us things, whether in formal curriculum or in informal education. And lastly, best practices in ecological education. So many of these themes, as you can see, are flexible enough so that we can fit in whatever ideas you might have, whatever studies or initiatives you are doing. So we will be opening the submission of abstract and registration on May 10. So that's less than a month from now. And you will have until June 30 to submit your abstract. The screening committee will be releasing the results, the list of submitted or accepted abstracts from July. So usually every year we get a lot of submissions. We do hope to get a high number of submissions this year also. We also have other events, and we will be talking about them in greater detail in future events of AUNEC, so please join us. But the last one I would like to mention, which is quite big, probably bigger than how we originally envisioned it, is the AUN EEC and AUN SCU, the city planning workshop and competition happening in October, called Reimagining the City. So after taking into consideration the insights from today's webinar and the upcoming conference, we call on the Southeast Asian youth to reimagine their city. We will launch it sometime in October, after which it will be followed by an elimination round when participants get to submit their concept notes on how they reimagine their city. There will be a series of workshops to improve the ideas, and we shall invite the finalists for an on-site or hybrid presentation, wherein a set of judges will be determining the champion for the city planning competition. So quite exciting. I hope you are excited, and you will hear more about it, and you will see more about the promotions on our social media. At this point, I'd like to turn over the floor to Daniel to discuss the membership application for AUN. Daniel.
Thank you very much, Dr. Emmanuel. Hi, everyone. My name is Daniel, and I will be briefly discussing the membership application in case anyone here represents an organization that is interested in joining our growing community of the AUN EEC. So our part of the university network currently has 33 regular members, which you can see in the next slide. Who are all either university-based administrative offices or academic departments that span the different member countries of the ASEAN. But aside from that, we also have 8 associate members who you can see in the next slide. And these are all either university-based student organizations or professional groups, private businesses, NGOs, and even local government units. Okay. So who can be a member? As you will see in the next slide, there are 3 different membership types, whether you are within or outside of the university context, you are very much welcome to apply to be a member. However, do note that membership is on an institutional basis and not on the individual basis. And these institutions must either be located or based in any or several of the 10 currently recognized ASEAN membership states. There is no membership fee, as you can see in the next slide, and membership retention simply requires annual attendance of at least one representative of your institution to one AUN EEC hosted event, as well as co-hosting or co-sponsoring one event with either the AUN EEC Secretariat or with any other AUN EEC members every 3 years. So how do we go about the membership application process? As you will see in the next slide, interested institutions may accomplish the membership application form, which is accessible via the short link that you see on screen. And we will also be sharing this in the chat. Once accomplished, for the next step in the next slide, you may submit the form via another short link, which you will see in the next slide for the submission of the application form. And the application period for this intake period actually ends next January 31. So it's still quite a ways to go, but we do encourage people to already send their application forms once you feel that your institution or your organization is ready to join the network. This will, of course, undergo review by the steering committee. In the next slide, okay, so once it has gone review by the steering committee, there will be deliberations, and the steering committee will get back to you with the results of your application. And we're always looking to welcome new institutions into our growing network. If you would like to know more about us, please visit our website at auneec.ateneo.edu for more details or scan the QR code. We will also be sending all of these links in the chat. And speaking of community, this ties in very neatly with our next slide. Okay, so speaking of community, the AUN EEC Secretariat is housed within the Ateneo Institute of Sustainability of the Ateneo de Manila University. So if you'd like to keep in touch and stay updated with the events of the network and of AIS, you can keep us in your orbit by following us on the following platforms. And with that, we thank you very much for your interest in joining the network, joining our growing family. So at this point, I'd like to move the program on to the next portion.
All right. Thank you, Daniel. At this point, may we call on Ms. Jean Hardeleza Mijares, AUN EEC Secretariat and Program Manager for Climate and Disaster Resilience at the Ateneo Institute of Sustainability, to deliver the closing remarks.
Thank you, Dean Bopip. So as we come to the end of our webinar on revisiting the city, looking at the tensions and intentions in urban sustainability, on behalf of the Secretariat of the ASEAN University Network on Ecological Education and Culture, I wish to express our gratitude to our speakers, Dr. Eric Wolf and to Ms. Arceli Tungol, for lending their time, energy, and expertise. Their talks have really shed light on the complexities of urban sustainability and the importance of educating and involving our communities in shaping more sustainable future, especially in Southeast Asia. Dr. Wolf's discussion on nature-based solutions in Southeast Asia really highlighted the challenges and best practices of making cities part of nature and nature part of cities from the beginning, and not just to include nature as an afterthought, to consider the identities, the values of communities, find inspiration and learn from what is already existing and integrate this into our future with nature. Ms. Tungol's presentation on the appreciation of native tree species for biodiversity conservation really underscored the power of intentions in driving positive change. Her work exemplifies how individuals, organizations can make a difference, right, in promoting sustainability in urban environments, inspiring us to unleash our skills, our interests as individuals and communities to harness the power and the beauty of native trees in building more sustainable cities with biologically functioning and thriving green spaces. I would also like to thank, of course, Dr. Zarina Saloma Actedonu for being our moderator today, really driving the conversation forward and bringing in diverse voices from the participants, diving into the questions and tensions and opportunities for intentions in the city. I know there are lots of many more questions, and we hope to get the conversations running even after this webinar. So we hope that you will indeed be part of the ASEAN University Network on Ecological Education and Culture as official members. My appreciation as well goes to the people behind this webinar, my colleagues in the AUN EEC Secretariat, Dr. Emmanuel Delacado, our Executive Director, Mr. Carl Alonsagay, Mr. Daniel Retilla, and Mr. Chris Castillo of the AUN EEC Secretariat for all the work that you do. Our interns from the Ateneo Institute of Sustainability for your assistance, Timmy Romero, Roz Labaria, and Nick Abella. Thank you so much. And thanks also goes as well to Ms. Denise Galias, the comms officer in AIS, for helping us promote the event. And of course, our deep gratitude goes to you, dear participants and colleagues in ecological education and culture from all over Asia joining us, being here today as we continue to converse about how to rewild our cities. Thank you very much. As we reflect on the key questions raised in this webinar, it is clear that cities and we who are part of these cities play important roles in mainstreaming ecological education and culture. And despite these challenges, there is growing movement towards sustainability. There is hope driven by the intentions of individuals and communities to create a more sustainable world. I hope that today's discussion have inspired you to continue exploring these important issues and to take action in your own context, in your own communities. I also hope that today inspires and excites you to look around you, look around your area, to take a walk in your villages, in your communities, see and listen to nature, to understand nature, to love nature, and find opportunities to embrace the wild in our cities. Thank you once again to everyone, to our speakers, to our moderator, Dean Bopip, and to all of you for joining us this afternoon. Back to you, Dean.
You're welcome, and thank you, Jean. Thank you, everyone, once again for your participation in this webinar. We hope you have gained fresh insights on the tensions and intentions in urban sustainability. Please don't forget to accomplish our event evaluation form. Our tech team has posted the link in the chat. Requests for e-certificates will be coursed through the same form. Bye for now. We hope to see you again in the rest of the AUN EEC events this year.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. It was a great pleasure. Happy to
Thank you,
continue the
everyone.
conversations. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Sel. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
So closing the webinar, we're just playing a playlist about cities. And we hope to enjoy this today. Thank you so much, Dean. Thank you. At this point, we're going to start moving participants into the waiting room that can also start.